He stood there, clutching his resume, his heart pounding with hope for a new beginning, only to watch his dreams shredded, literally, by a manager's cruel hands in front of a room full of stunned colleagues. The resume, a testament to years of hard work, lay in pieces on the floor, just like his spirit. Wherever you're reading this, whether in New York, London, Chicago, or Manchester, take a moment to share this story. Let's shine a light on workplace injustices and demand accountability. He was Marcus Johnson, a 32-year-old black man from Atlanta, Georgia, who had spent the last decade climbing the ranks in a mid-sized tech firm, Apex Solutions. Marcus wasn't just another employee. He was the guy who stayed late, double-checking code, mentoring interns, and always volunteering for the tough projects. His colleagues respected him, not just for his skill, but for his quiet determination. He'd grown up in a working-class neighborhood, the son of a schoolteacher and a mechanic, and he'd learned early that nothing came easy. Every achievement, his engineering degree, his certifications, his promotions, was earned through grit and sacrifice. Apex Solutions, headquartered in downtown Atlanta, was known for its sleek glass offices and a culture that preached innovation and inclusion. Marcus had joined the company 5 years ago as a junior developer, and now he was eyeing a senior software engineer role, a position that would not only boost his career, but also provide the financial stability to support his aging parents. The role had opened up after a recent wave of layoffs, and Marcus saw it as his chance to step up. He'd spent weeks perfecting his resume, tailoring it to highlight his contributions. The app he'd built that increased user retention by 15%, the system overhaul that saved the company thousands in downtime, and the countless hours he'd poured into team training. The hiring process was rigorous, but Marcus was ready. He'd aced the technical interviews, impressed the panel with his problem-solving, and received glowing feedback from his peers. All that remained was the final interview with the department manager, Karen Whitfield, a woman known for her sharp tongue and high standards. Marcus wasn't naive. He knew the workplace wasn't always fair, especially for someone like him. He'd faced subtle slights before, overlooked suggestions in meetings, assumptions about his qualifications. But he'd always pushed through, believing his work would speak for itself. This time, he thought, would be no different. It was a Wednesday morning, and the conference room was packed. The team had gathered for a quarterly review, but Karen had announced that she'd also use the meeting to discuss the senior engineer position. Marcus sat near the front, his resume neatly folded in his hand, his palms sweaty but his posture confident. He'd been preparing for this moment for months, and he was ready to make his case. Karen, a tall woman in her late 40s, with a reputation for being direct, stood at the head of the table. Her eyes scanned the room, lingering briefly on Marcus before moving on. "Let's get started," she said, her voice clipped. "We're here to talk about performance, but first, I want to address the open position. We've had several applicants, and I've reviewed all the resumes." Marcus felt a flicker of hope. He'd heard through the grapevine that his application was strong, that his name was at the top of the list. He straightened in his chair, ready to hear his name called. Karen continued, "This role requires someone exceptional, someone who can handle pressure, lead projects, and represent Apex at the highest level." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room again. "I've made my decision, but before I announce it, I want to make something clear." She reached into a folder and pulled out a stack of resumes. Marcus recognized his at the top, the clean, professional layout he'd spent hours perfecting. Karen held it up, her lips curling into a thin smile. "This," she said, "is Marcus Johnson's resume." The room went quiet. Marcus's heart raced. Was this it? Was she about to praise his work, announce his promotion? He leaned forward, his eyes locked on her. But then, in a slow, deliberate motion, Karen tore the resume in half. The sound of ripping paper echoed in the silent room. She didn't stop there. She tore it again and again, until the pieces fluttered to the floor. Gasps rippled through the team. Marcus froze, his breath caught in his throat. "This," Karen said, her voice cold, "is what I think of Marcus's qualifications. He's not ready. He's not senior engineer material, and I want everyone here to understand that we have standards at Apex." The words hit Marcus like a punch. His face burned, not just from embarrassment, but from the sting of betrayal. He'd worked for this company, poured his soul into it, and now his manager was humiliating him in front of his peers. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but his voice wouldn't come. The room spun, the faces of his colleagues blurring into a haze of shock and pity. "Why?" Marcus finally managed, his voice low but steady. "Why would you do that?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "Because, Marcus, you're good, but you're not great. You don't have the leadership qualities we need. You don't have the presence. This role requires someone who can command a room, and frankly, you don't." The accusation hung in the air. Marcus felt the weight of every eye on him. Some colleagues looked away, uncomfortable. Others stared, waiting for his response. He could feel the unspoken question in the room. Was this about his skills, or was it something else? He'd heard the whispers before, about how Karen favored certain employees, how she'd once dismissed a black intern's idea as unpolished, while praising a similar pitch from a white colleague. But this was blatant. "I've led projects," Marcus said, his voice rising. "I've delivered results. My metrics speak for themselves. You can't just tear up my resume and act like my work doesn't matter." Karen crossed her arms. "Your metrics are fine, Marcus, but this isn't just about numbers. It's about fit, and I don't see you fitting this role." The word "fit" landed like a slap. Marcus knew what it implied. He'd heard it before, in different words, different contexts. Not the right culture, not the right vibe. Code for something he couldn't change, something that had nothing to do with his qualifications. Then explain it. Marcus pressed, his voice shaking with anger. "Explain to everyone here why I'm not a fit. Because I deserve that much." Karen's face hardened. "This isn't a debate, Marcus. I've made my decision. The role is going to Sarah. Sarah Thompson, a white colleague with 3 years less experience than Marcus, sat across the table. She looked as shocked as anyone, her eyes wide, her hands fidgeting. Marcus didn't blame her. She hadn't asked for this. But the announcement stung all the same. The room erupted in murmurs. One colleague, Jamal, spoke up. "Karen, with all due respect, Marcus has been killing it. His app launch last quarter was a game changer. How is he not a fit?" Karen's jaw tightened. "Jamal, this isn't your place. I've made my call." "It's everyone's place," Jamal shot back. "You just tore up his resume in front of us. You owe him an explanation." The tension was palpable. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude for Jamal's support, but he also knew this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the culture of Apex, about what was allowed to happen in plain sight. The meeting ended abruptly, with Karen dismissing everyone and storming out. Marcus stayed in his seat, staring at the scraps of his resume on the floor. His colleagues filed out, some offering quiet words of support, others avoiding his gaze. Jamal lingered, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "This isn't right, man. We've got your back." But Marcus wasn't sure who "we" was. He'd always believed in Apex's mission, in its promises of fairness, but now he saw the cracks. Over the next few days, the incident spread through the office like wildfire. People whispered in break rooms, exchanged texts, and debated what to do. Some defended Karen, saying she was just being tough or honest. Others called it what it was, discriminatory. Marcus didn't want to be a victim, but he couldn't shake the humiliation. He replayed the moment in his mind. The rip of the paper, Karen's smug expression, the silence of the room. He thought about quitting, but that felt like letting her win. Instead, he decided to fight back. He reached out to HR, filing a formal complaint about Karen's behavior. He detailed everything, the public humiliation, the vague excuses, the pattern of favoritism he'd noticed over the years. He included statements from colleagues who'd witnessed the incident, including Jamal and a few others who'd come forward. HR promised an investigation, but Marcus wasn't naive. He knew how these things went. Corporations protected their own, and Karen had been with Apex for over a decade. Still, he wasn't alone. Jamal and a few others started organizing, talking to employees about workplace equity, about the need for real change. They created an anonymous survey, asking colleagues about their experiences with bias. The responses were staggering. Stories of overlooked promotions, dismissive comments, and unequal treatment, particularly for Black and minority employees. Meanwhile, Karen doubled down. In a follow-up meeting, she addressed the team, claiming the Resume incident was misunderstood. She said she'd torn it up to make a point about the high standards for the role, not to single out Marcus. But her explanation rang hollow, especially when she announced that Sarah's promotion was finalized. Marcus wasn't invited to that meeting, but word got back to him. He wasn't deterred. He started researching employment law, reaching out to a lawyer friend for advice. He learned about Title Romans 7, about protections against workplace discrimination, and about the possibility of a lawsuit. But more than that, he wanted accountability. He wanted Apex to face the truth about its culture. The tension in the office grew unbearable. Some colleagues rallied around Marcus, sharing their own stories of unfair treatment. Others distanced themselves, afraid of rocking the boat. Sarah, caught in the middle, approached Marcus one day in the break room. "I didn't ask for this," she said quietly. "I feel awful. I don't even want the role if it's like this." Marcus appreciated her honesty, but he was clear. "It's not about you, Sarah. It's about a system that lets this happen." The HR investigation dragged on with little communication. Marcus heard rumors that Karen was being coached, but faced no real consequences. He began to wonder if he'd made a mistake by staying, but then something shifted. The anonymous survey results leaked online, posted on a public forum by an unknown employee. The stories, dozens of them, painted a damning picture of Apex's culture. Blogs picked it up, and soon local news outlets were calling for comment. Apex's leadership scrambled to respond, issuing a statement about their commitment to diversity, but the damage was done. Employees started speaking out publicly, and Marcus's story, the Resume incident, became the centerpiece. He was contacted by a reporter from a major Atlanta newspaper who wanted to hear his side. At first, he hesitated. Going public could ruin his career, but then he thought about the torn Resume, the years of being overlooked, and the colleagues who'd shared their own pain. He agreed to the interview. The article, published a week later, was explosive. Titled "Torn Dreams, A Black Worker's Fight for Fairness at Apex Solutions," it detailed Marcus's experience, backed by quotes from colleagues and the leaked survey data. Social media erupted with hashtags like #justice for Marcus trending. Apex's stock dipped, and clients began asking questions. Karen was placed on administrative leave pending a thorough review. Marcus didn't celebrate. He knew this wasn't the end, but it was a start. He began receiving messages from strangers, other Black professionals who'd faced similar treatment. Their stories fueled his resolve. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. The twist came a month later. At a company-wide town hall, Apex's CEO announced a series of reforms: mandatory bias training, a revamped hiring process, and an independent audit of workplace practices. But the real shock was Karen's resignation. In a leaked email, she claimed she was leaving to pursue other opportunities. But insiders knew the truth. She'd been pushed out. The company couldn't afford the PR nightmare. Marcus didn't get the senior engineer role. Sarah, overwhelmed by the controversy, declined it, and the position remained open. But Marcus wasn't defeated. He'd exposed a truth that Apex couldn't ignore, and he'd inspired others to speak up. He was offered a settlement by the company, but he turned it down, choosing instead to join a class action lawsuit with other employees. The fight was far from over, but Marcus felt a clarity he hadn't before. He wasn't just a coder anymore. He was a voice for change, wherever you are, whether in Los Angeles, Birmingham, or anywhere else. Don't let this story fade. Share it. Talk about it. Demand better from the places you work, the leaders you follow. Marcus's Resume may have been torn, but his hope is far from crushed. Join him in rebuilding what was broken.